My name's Aidan Lapp. I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm living in Brooklyn. I think I've always been interested in people. My background was in the theater in LA, and I was performing a lot, and from like a very young age, I was doing Shakespeare, kind of pretentious. But I kind of like realized there was this group needed to make something creative, which was really amazing and really frustrating. But I think like this idea of like solo looking at people and making the work by yourself in a visual setting like really appealed to me. It was a pretty straightforward line of transition for me. And yeah, I went to school in Brooklyn and I studied painting, and people have always kind of been the through line in what I've been studying. And yeah, I'm still interested in people and portraiture specifically. I think what interests me most about portraiture right now is that I've been doing it for a while, and the idea of like portraits becoming obsolete. Like our faces and our style and who we are changes so much at this kind of point where most of my sitters are. Like I tend to paint a lot of other creatives or people in their early 20s, and my style changes, the portraits themselves change, the physicality of the people changes, and I think that's kind of very much what I'm interested right now in these portraits, is capturing this moment and knowing that it's gonna be gone, and then getting to recapture it a couple years later. I like to think of my work as like process-based, not product-based. I remember doing this portrait of an ex-boyfriend, and like really kind of all this work that I'd done before that really just culminated in this beautiful watercolor I did of him in this great knit sweater. And that was the first time I was like, okay, well, I got this person on paper. I remember looking at that and thinking about that and thinking I'd finally gotten it and made that first piece. And yeah, it took a long time to do, but now it's just trying to get that feeling again and again. I just like, as long as I can remember, I was kind of very creative. But I think in terms of making art, I'd say it took me till I was about like 19 to kind of make a piece that I would stand by today and consider, a fine art piece. I think my goal is to live an interesting life. I think I love painting, as it's a great medium to like painting and drawing, and it's a great medium to meet people and to really sit and have good conversations with people. I think, and to have like a product of that. Yeah, I would love to be a great painter in 70 years, but I'm also like just interested in whatever happens, and painting is what I'm doing right now. I hope I'm painting in 70 years, but I'm interested in just having good conversations, being creative, and meeting the right people, I think. So this is kind of a perfect piece to talk about, as we have, see back here? Yeah. So this is my friend Izzy. She sat on the couch like a couple months ago, and this portrait, usually I kind of do two sittings. Like I do one where it's just the face, especially if it's a new sitter. I really have to learn somebody's face. And it's like a 30-minute just like rough line sketch. It's the sacrificial drawing. Sometimes it's better than the piece I end up working from, but I found that like immediately diving into a portrait of somebody without learning kind of like the curves of their faces and where their nose hooks, like it's not going to be a good drawing. So I do a little prep work, and then I have somebody sit for like usually 2 to 4 hours. And what we get then is like what I refer to as the architecture for the painting. A really important part of my practice is that drawings don't feel like preparatory works. Or like in service of painting. Like what I really try to do is balance this moment where I was together with the sitter with adding paint on it later. I'm not at the point in my life, and neither are my sitters, where I can have somebody sit for 3 days, which is what I think it would take for me to do a painting. But I can have somebody sit for a drawing, and also there's such movement and energy in drawings. Like it's really the closest you can get to seeing, I think. With color, you're so bogged down with choices. And with drawing, it's so much more, gesture and more immediate and intimate, I find. So this will eventually be sealed. And then I probably have a reference photo somewhere to work from. I like to use Polaroids all the time because when you have too crisp of a photo, you're referencing the photo and you're not looking at the painting. When you're looking at a Polaroid, you can't zoom. You're just kind of like, oh, this is kind of what the colors you're working with. Then you'd end up with something like this. I mean, this is a portrait of Eddie, kind of done upstairs. And you can see that a lot of that initial drawing is still there. I think he's wearing an Adidas shirt, maybe in Russian, I would guess, maybe Greek. But a lot of the original pencil work patterning is there. You can see the pencil tattoo, the chair. Yeah, a lot of the initial moment that we shared and that provided it is still there. And there's so many gestures in drawing that you can't get with painting. And also, painting is an amazing tool to enhance drawing. So yeah, I try to sit in between that. I don't know if I'd consider myself a drawer or a painter, but yeah. I think my work is about people I love, and people that I find interesting. I hope that in 20 years, there's a retrospective of the work that I made now and a work that I make in 20 years, and it's how we've all changed and who we were at this moment. Like, I really see this as the capturing of who people are in this moment and also who we are as a youth right now and what we're wearing and what the hairstyles are and, what posters are on our wall. It's, I try to keep it very contemporary and very current, but I think with that, it will stand the test of time, hopefully. The advice that really helped me, especially for artists that have gone through a 4-year program, I found that in the 4-year program, we were just being pushed so much to challenge what our art is about, to challenge our place in art, and that's a really important thing. And I remember just grappling with those questions, and I ended up going on a residency to Oxbow, and I was chatting with a visiting artist there who just said, just make what you like. And it sounds so simple and so easy, but I think a lot of artists in their early 20s, it's just you have to keep making. And that's the big challenge that we're all dealing with. It's how do you make when your shifts are long and you're worn out after hosting or being a production assistant, those are the challenges. And I think to just make the work that comes easy to you is great advice. I really love the School of London. And I think their kind of restraint is really wonderful. I really think it makes you look at the skin tones, makes you kind of look harder rather than having things punchy at you. I also think that's a lot to do with my work. I was a watercolorist before I was an oil painter, so I rely a lot on the paper itself to bring out lightness. So there's not really a lot of harsh colors from me, I would say. Well, I think I work on paper a lot because of the pandemic. If you live with 200 paintings, you know what it is to move. 200 paintings, that's hard. I live with 300 drawings very easily. And I think paper itself also is really durable. I know everybody thinks it's gonna rip and it's gonna puncture. Not 100% cotton rag. Yeah, I think paper gets kind of a bad rep, and I think it's an old school idea that things have to be on canvas. Leave it up to the framers, I love paper. Big paper advocate. I really find a lot of freedom living within a box. I think if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you can really learn a lot. And, that's not to say I wouldn't love to one day get to landscapes or one day try something else, but I really think I've discovered a lot about style and how to build a practice and, how to just be as an artist by kind of having this way of being. I also think art can be really lonely, there's this whole idea of being alone in the studio, which has to take place, but I would much rather, for half the process, sit with somebody and talk to them. I think it's also very interesting being with a sitter and having them pose for you. Like, it's not natural. So people watch themselves being watched, the John Berger quote, but, everybody's a little different, and you're also just noticing people different. Like, sometimes you look at somebody like, oh, you have like really full lips, and it's the first time you're noticing that about somebody, and they definitely feel you looking at like this spot on their face and are very present to it. So yeah, I like that kind of back and forth with the sitter. I'm really interested in my paintings and drawings being painting and drawings. I think the photo reference is beaten out of me, which is a good thing. I like for things to be imperfect. I think a lot of people are like, why does everybody have big noses in your pieces? I don't really have that big of a nose, I don't think. But it's just how things are done, in my world. And people tend to have long noses. People tend to have, kind of long faces and long eyes. And I think I wanted a level of reality that I've kind of left. And it's like, no, that's just kind of how I draw people. And I've learned to kind of embrace that with time. I tend to, when I'm trying something out, work off of a self-portrait just because I know what my face looks like, and I've done self-portraits without even having a reference, and they tend to be fine. Like no mirror, no nothing, and I can do it. But yeah, I think a lot of my own facial architecture goes into other people. It tends to be like 25% me and 75% somebody else. I would really... I'd love to continue. I just love to continue. Like I have been out of a studio for a little bit, and I've had a process where I do a ton of these drawings. I'll get the initial sittings together, and then I go find a studio and I add color to them. I'd really love to have a practice where the sitting and the painting is happening in very close succession to each other. But I think that just depends on me getting a studio and figuring some stuff out. But yeah, I think the formula is the same, it's just more of it.